Check, check, mic check. Check, check, mic check. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I am your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder, and Happy New Year! I am streaming to you live on New Year's Eve, and that is one of the cool things is that I can come here live to whatever platform you happen to be browsing through, scanning through, clicking through, getting notifications from, and talk to you in real time. And then I can take whatever I end up saying in this moment and put it out in an edited format in the audio podcast feed for Podcast Envy. You can always follow me on the socials in order to get these live streams fresh out of my brain when they happen. LinkedIn is Andrea Klunder, Instagram is at The Creative Imposter, and YouTube is also The Creative Imposter? YouTube. I can't remember what I'm doing over there. But I wanted to come on and wish you a happy new year. And I wonder if you have this same problem that I have, which is that for some reason, New Year's Eve, instead of thinking about partying and celebrating and having fun, I get 1,000+ ideas for things that are new that I want to do, especially in regards to creating, especially in regards to my business, especially in regards to podcasting. And I don't know, do you have that same issue where you suddenly get all these new ideas? Or it may be the opposite. Maybe instead of all these new things that you want to do or all these new things that you want to try, maybe what happens is that you think of all the things that didn't work, that you're disappointed in from the year before, that you want to just cut loose and let go of so that you have space to do something new in the new year. So maybe that's where you find yourself. And especially as relates to podcasting, for your business, your brand, your organization, yes, there is a reason why I'm holding sharp, pointy object in my hand. I'll get to it in a moment. But maybe you have been podcasting all this time. Maybe you've been podcasting for a year. Maybe you've been podcasting for 6 months. Maybe you've been podcasting for 5 years. Maybe you have not been podcasting, and for some reason, you're still following me and following Podcast Envy. And maybe it's because you've been pod dreaming for a while, a week, a month, 6 months, a year, 5 years. I don't know how long you've been pod dreaming, but you haven't quite been able to figure out how to fit podcasting into your world, into your business, into your brand, into your workflow. If you have already been podcasting, maybe you are disappointed with the results. I know a lot of disappointed podcasters who are continuing to keep going despite being disappointed, but they're still like, I don't know why I can't stop podcasting. It's clearly not working. Or they are really considering quitting, or they have quit. I'm going to pop a message up on the screen from Jonas, one of the alumni from the Power Your Story podcast program. Hi, Jonas. Jonas has been podcasting with me for a few years as one of our high school student producers and has graduated from high school and thus no longer a part of the podcasting program. We miss you so much, Jonas. Jonas says, yes, I am excited for the midnight countdown and I'll let you know what's new for 2024. So I am very excited to hear from you, Jonas, and see what you're up to in the new year. I do want to explain to you why I have these scissors, and that is because I am past due at opening this tube that I'm holding in my hand. And this tube is from Stoked Design Shop. You can definitely go on Etsy and find them there. And I found them about a little over a year ago when I was working with Diane Wingert, who is a business coach and the producer and host of the Driven Woman Entrepreneur podcast. So if you are a driven woman entrepreneur, definitely check out Diane's podcast. And I was working with Diane a little over a year ago at the end of 2022 into 2023, mostly because I was feeling burned out. And I've talked about this a little bit before. I was feeling very burned out on podcasting, on my business, in a lot of different areas. And I needed to figure something out. And I thought what I needed to figure out was something new that I could offer, some new service, some new product, some new something so that I could generate more money and not feel so burnt out. But as I'm saying this, I realize how a little bit ridiculous it sounds to say, I was feeling burnt out and overwhelmed, and so I wanted to add something new. Oh, la la. So, one of the things that Diane instructed me to do as part of our coaching was to buy a calendar. And actually, if you are watching this on video, you can see behind me this little bit of wall calendar back here with all these colored strips. If you're listening in audio, it's a craft paper, a brown craft paper wall calendar that is a year at a glance for the whole year. And then I have little strips of color-coded washi tape that are on different days and different weeks. And the washi tape is actually showing me which of my seasonal shows are in production. It is showing me any special projects or initiatives. It is showing me when my high school podcast mentoring program that I mentioned earlier with my former student Jonas, when Power Your Story is in session. So it's helping to show me when my busy times of the year are and when I have a little bit more space. Even more importantly than that, this calendar is showing me in shiny gold washi tape when my time off is, when my non-negotiable time off is. And this is important because one of the ways that we were working on combating burnout was to create some spaciousness, not to add just for the sake of adding or just because I felt like I needed to add. We needed to create boundaries. I needed to create boundaries and stick to them and have some accountability to those boundaries. And I needed to figure out where I had space to do different things, creative things. So I'm a little bit behind on opening this tube. I actually purchased this a couple months ago, I believe. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll open it on a live stream. And so it's been sitting here waiting and waiting and waiting. And maybe this is just my way of creatively procrastinating, looking at my year ahead. But here we are at the very end of 2023, and I can no longer wait for a 2024 wall calendar. And so I'm pretty sure I ordered the exact same wall calendar as you're already seeing here. So let's see. Yep. Here we are, the 2024 calendar. Dun, dun. Excellent, excellent, excellent. It is the same design as 2023, and this is fantastic. So this isn't the only reason why I'm here on the stream today. Actually, the real reason why I wanted to come here is not just to give myself the accountability of opening the new wall calendar, but also to talk about disappointing podcasting results or why we haven't started a podcast yet. What is holding you back? And I think that even I was getting disappointed with podcasting results for myself personally, for my clients, for potential clients out in the internet land, in the real world. And I was feeling this year like, I don't know, maybe podcasting doesn't work. Maybe podcasting is dead. Maybe I should get out of this industry. Maybe I should try something else. Maybe I shouldn't be recommending it. Maybe no one needs a podcast. Maybe we need to give up on podcasting overall. And this is partly due to a drop in download numbers that a lot of people have seen across the board. This is due to a lot of bigger network shows getting canceled. And I was just starting to feel really down. And yet, more new podcasts were launched this year, and every year more and more new podcasts get launched, and every year more and more people start podcasting, and every year I meet more and more people who are thinking about starting a podcast. And so if it's dead, if there's no point to it, if it doesn't work, why do we keep doing it? Why are more people starting podcasts? And as I was puzzling this out and thinking about the direction that I wanted to go and what is happening in the industry and why we're having disappointing results, I started to think about there is more than one reason to have a podcast. Again, this seems totally obvious. There is more than one reason to have a podcast. There are more ways to use podcasting than what we think of. Now, I think the reason why we get caught up in download numbers And we get disappointed when the download numbers are stagnant and not growing, not as big as we had hoped, or even dropping, is because it's an easy measurement. It's one of the only easy metrics and easy quantifiable measurements that we have for the success of our podcast. But truly, I have seen people with very successful podcasting strategies who only have about 100 listeners per episode in the months that they release, so about 100 core listeners. And I have seen podcasts that have 1,500 or 2,000 listeners that don't feel like their podcast is successful. So what is with this discrepancy? And I was realizing that when we only think about podcasting for our business, for our brand, for our organization, in order to grow our audience, and the reason we want to grow our audience is to sell more of a thing in order to make money. I'm putting this in very basic terms. We want to grow our audience to sell more of a thing to make more money. When that is the only thing that we are thinking about with podcasting, grow our audience to sell more of a thing to make more money, then we are often going to be disappointed because there are easier, more cost-effective, faster ways to grow our audience to sell more of a thing and make more money. This does not mean that podcasting doesn't work, but it means that we have to be a little bit smarter than just download numbers, growing our audience to sell a thing. We have to think about what podcasting does really, really well and how to leverage the time, the money, the energy, the effort, the investment that we are putting into our podcast to know how to leverage that in a way that it makes more sense, that it fits into our strategy and into our workflow better. I wanted a better word than better, but really it needs to make sense. And sometimes we're just doing it because we believe it can work. We love making our podcasts. It's one of our favorite things that we get to do. And yet sometimes we feel like it's sucking a lot of resources and we're not getting the results that we want. And so I was thinking, okay, well, if that's too narrow of a focus to think of for our reason for podcasting, for how we're using this time, energy, effort, money, team, contractor, budget investment, what is the smarter way, the more effective way to go about this? And I remembered all the way back to 2015. At the end of 2015, I launched a podcast called The Creative Imposter. And maybe you've listened to The Creative Imposter, maybe not. I haven't released a new episode of The Creative Imposter in over 2 years. I'm still thinking about going back to it. This was before I had a podcasting business. This is just when I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll start a podcast. Let me try it and see how this works. But one of the first interviews I recorded, and in fact, the first interview I ever released on The Creative Imposter, it's The Creative Imposter episode 2, was with someone who is still in my network and in my orbit, who is an awesome educator and creator named Nikki Neagle. And I interviewed Nikki Neagle because of an event series that she was doing at the time that is now retired. She no longer does that. But if you are interested in education, innovative thinking, how to connect with young people, and outside of the box cultural conversations, I would definitely recommend following Nikki on Instagram. Her IG handle is on the screen. It's at Nikki Neagle, nikki.neagle, Nigl. And I will definitely link it in the show notes for this episode. And again, it's episode 2, but I re-released that interview down the road as episode 38 of The Creative Imposter, and I had re-edited it and taken out some of the stuff that was no longer relevant to really focus in on the message. And you can find it at thecreativeimposter.com/038. I do recommend you go take a listen to that episode because even though it is not expressly about podcasting, the key message and the title of episode 2 is focus on the what. And her message in a nutshell was that when something isn't working, when you need to make a shift, when you want to try something new, sometimes we get so caught up in the how are we going to do it that it becomes overwhelming, that we get stuck, that we get imposter syndrome, that we feel like it's never going to work, or we just get stuck in analysis paralysis. So it's just like a quagmire when we're focused on how are we going to do something. How am I going to make my podcast more successful? How am I going to get more listeners for my podcast? How am I going to start a podcast? How am I going to fit podcasting into my business? I know how to do all of those things. And I get anxiety. I get a feeling in the pit of my stomach, like, ugh, when I hear those questions or when I say those questions out loud. So rather than focusing on how, her advice, her message was to focus on the what. What is it that I'm trying to do? Don't worry about how. Don't worry about whether it's possible. Focus on what it is that I am trying to do, what it is that I want to do. And then somewhere along the line, as you focus on what, the how sort of magically starts to filter in. And sometimes it'll change the what as we get into the how, but don't even worry about that. Just focus on what is it that you want to do. And this is perfect for New Year's because we set resolutions, we make New Year's intentions, we pick our word of the year, and that's a lot of what. I want you to think not what is it that I want my podcast to do? I want you to take a step even further back from that and say, what is it that I want to do this year? What is it that I want more of in my business? What is it that I'm trying to do? What is the focus? And then we can start to see how we can strategically map what you are already doing, the resources, the time, the budget, the effort, the attention that you are already putting into creating a podcast. And we can shape and mold that and concentrate that into something that supports the what that you are trying to do in your business, in your organization, with your brand. Because maybe you did that in the beginning, but maybe that has changed. And the way you've been podcasting is the same as the way you were podcasting in the beginning when your what was different. And then the other question that I think is a quagmire that very often in marketing land, we are told to focus on our why. Have you ever heard this one before? Focus on your why. What's your purpose? In fact, I start a lot of my podcast coaching engagements and podcast launch sessions with purpose, with why. Why are you podcasting? Why do you want to start a show? Why do you want to do this? And I don't think it's bad, but I think I might change my phrasing a little bit, because where we get stuck when we start with asking why is that most of us, or at least most of the people that I end up working with, most of the creatives and the artists and the entrepreneurs and the nonprofit thought leaders, most of us have a why that is rooted in because I want to help people, because I want to provide a resource for my audience, because I want to have a creative expression for my thoughts and my ideas and my business and my brand. But we add the business and the brand purpose after the personal purpose, which is I want to create this thing. I want to have interesting conversations. I want to connect with people. I want to provide a resource. I want to be helpful. And all of those things are great. I'm not saying those are bad whys or bad purposes, but they're a little wishy-washy. They're a little non-specific. And so if we can translate that language, that desire to be helpful, that desire to provide value, that desire to create a resource, that desire to have interesting conversations, that desire to connect, right? All of these really wonderful personal values, if we can translate that into a clearly defined what that we are trying to create or trying to do so that we can fulfill those desires, so that we can make those connections, so that we can help those people. If we can turn that into a what I am trying to do is I am trying to sell these courses to this particular audience so that I can help them. Now we have a clear purpose for our podcast. If what we are trying to do is we are trying to create a more accessible way to showcase the work that is being done in our community. Then we know that we are platform building for advocacy. And it is not about selling. And my approach to helping you use a podcast that you already have or a podcast that you would like to start is going to be different if we are platform building for accessibility and advocacy rather than trying to sell courses to help somebody solve a problem. Those are two great reasons to have a podcast that are rooted in a personal why, that is rooted in a mission, but they have a different what, which means that they have a different strategy. So it's not wrong to start with why, which is that, like feel good advice that we always get. It's not wrong. And it's not that we don't have to figure out how, like we absolutely do. The great thing is that generally you can hire somebody to help you figure out how. Or if you're not going to hire someone because you don't have budget, but you have time and you have a plucky DIY go-getter, self-starter. Oh, I hate all those phrases. Forget I said any of those words, but you have time and you have the desire to learn, you can probably find enough podcasts and YouTube videos and how-to tutorials and blog posts and follow enough creators for free online to figure out how to do the thing that you're trying to do. So you can either hire someone and shortcut your time, or you can save budget and figure out on your own with free resources. You can figure out the how. But you're gonna spin your wheels and waste a lot of time and energy and deal with a lot of frustration if you are not crystal clear on what. And again, if you already have a podcast and you are feeling frustrated, or maybe you're not even feeling frustrated, maybe it's working, but you feel like it is taking a lot of time, or it's working, but is it really worth the investment that I'm making? Again, is there a faster, easier, more cost-effective way to achieve the outcome that I'm achieving? Or maybe you're just bored with what you're doing with your podcast. These are all things that I hear often, especially at this time of year. So if that is the case, maybe there is another way you can leverage what you love most about podcasting, what you enjoy most about your show, what is working. Maybe there's a way that you can leverage it even more effectively. And that can only be done if you know exactly what it is that you're trying to do. Then we can shape the strategy to match that goal, and then we can measure its effectiveness or assess its effectiveness or do a gut check even about its effectiveness, because we're really clear on what it is that we're trying to do. And that thing that we are trying to do is not grow our audience so we can sell more of a thing to make more money. If that is the goal, that's fine too. But that's not the only goal. That's not the only thing we can be doing with our podcast, right? We can think more creatively than that. So I would love to invite you to check out Stoked Design Shop with their wall calendars, etc. on Etsy. I would love to invite you to listen to the Driven Woman Entrepreneur podcast with Diane Wingert. I would love to invite you to follow at nikki.neagle on Instagram. I would love for you to check out my episode of The Creative Imposter, episode 38 with Nikki Neagle. And I would love to ask for your help. I am putting together something for 2024 that will be a free offering. So yes, you will be able to get it for free regardless of what your budget is. I'm putting together something which will help us focus on the what. It is a private podcast that you can add to your favorite podcast player. And it is going to be all of the ways that I have come across, that I've seen, that I've heard of, that I've tried, that I've thought of in my mind, but I haven't seen anyone doing yet, but I know it will work. All the different ways that you can leverage podcasting for your business, your organization, or your brand. My goal is to come up with 100 different ways to leverage podcasting. And I'm actually almost there. I started a list today and I'm almost to 100, but it's come to like a little sputter where I can't quite get the last few ideas to make it all the way to 100 ways to leverage your podcast for your business, your organization, or your brand. So what I am asking you is to please reach out to me with one of two things. Number one, you have already been podcasting, and this could be a public or private podcast, which we haven't talked that much about private podcasts, but we will be. This could be a public or a private podcast. This could be audio or video, but it has to be something that you classify that you consider to be a podcast. The great audio versus video debate carries on for all time. You are already podcasting and you have had tremendous results from your podcast for a specific goal. So you have a clearly defined what it is that you are trying to do, and you are using your podcast to help you do that thing, and you are having great results. I would like to know very specifically what it is that your podcast is helping you to do. How are you leveraging your podcast to do a very specific thing? You don't have to give me a ton of details. You can email me. It's andrea@infuselife.net. And you can either just type out an email and in a few sentences, let me know what it is that your podcast is helping you do. Bonus points if you tell me how your podcast fits into that strategy. Just a few sentences. Or if you like audio, you can record a short voice memo or a Loom or anything like that and attach it to that email or send me the link to it in Dropbox or Google Drive or Loom or wherever you're putting these things, and verbally share with me what it is that you are doing that your podcast is supporting you on for your brand, your organization, or your business. If you send me a voice recording, I may even play it on a future episode of Podcast Envy, and then you'll be famous. So be sure you say your name, your business, brand, or organization, and the name of your podcast so that we can share that and shout you out. So that's one way that you can help me, is let me know what's working. What are you doing? Maybe it's a creative idea I haven't thought of yet. The other way you can help me is if you have a business, a brand, or an organization that is trying to do a specific thing in the new year, but you don't know how to leverage a podcast for that thing. And this could be if you do already have a podcast, but you're just not sure how to tie it into this goal. Or this could be that you don't have a podcast yet. You kind of would like to have one, but you're not sure really how it can support you in this bigger goal. Let me know what you have in your business that you're focusing on right now for the new year that you would love a creative way to connect podcasting to that, because I would love to challenge myself to see if I can figure out a way to connect podcasting, to leverage podcasting to just about any what. I have a theory that it's possible to do so, but I want to test this theory. So those are the two ways that you can help me out. Now, of course, it would not be fair for me to ask for help in coming up with my mission of 100 ways to leverage podcasting for your business, your organization, or your brand if I did not also offer something for you as well. I came up with something really simple and straightforward that I wanted to offer in the month of January 2024 only, and that is a New Year Dream Session. The New Year Dream Session is a one-time session where you get to connect with me in real time for 45 minutes and let me know what question, challenge, new thing that you want to try related to podcasting. And you could use some support and guidance in making sure that you're taking the right best next steps forward on that journey, or to help unclutter whatever is cluttering up the path forward. This is not something I normally offer, or I do, but really only for my existing podcast clients at the Creative Imposter Studios. So this is a one-time special offer as my schedule allows. You will have a few questions to answer about your podcast and your business and your goals and your brand. And then I will listen to your show. We will meet for 45 minutes on Zoom and talk through whatever this specific question, idea, goal, plan is. And then you'll have 7 days of follow-up time with me via a voice messaging app called Voxer. So that is the full offer. It is a paid offer. And the best way to find out more is to email me, again, Andrea@infuselife.net. Let me know that you are curious about the New Year Dream Session. It's not a commitment. There's no I can't with the sales tactics. Like there's no high pressure or anything like that. But I will send you the details of how much it costs, how to get on the calendar, and we'll get you on the books for a January 2024 New Year Dream Session. So that is where I will leave this for today. Thank you so much for those of you who tuned in live. Thank you for those of you who are watching the replay. And thank you to those of you who are listening to this in the Podcast Envy feed. Just remember the advice that I'm going to leave you with is focus on the what. There are multiple ways to leverage podcasting for your brand. And I think with a little bit of creative thought partnership, we can figure out how to do that in a way that you will love, and we can leave disappointment behind in 2023 and move forward with confidence and joy into the new year. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will catch you another time. Podcast Envy is produced by your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. That's me. The Podcast Envy theme music is by Valentin Sosnitsky, courtesy of the Free Sound Project at freesound.org, and our podcast Angel music is by Benjamin Mastropolito, also on freesound.org as Lemon Cream. All music is licensed under the Creative Commons. Our episodes are mixed by Edwin Ruiz, and hey, if you want your show to sound as good as ours, hire us. Put the magic audio mojo of the Creative Imposter Studios to work for you. Thanks so much for listening, and here's to making your podcast the envy of everyone else.